In this video, I'm going to cover how to distribute startup equity fairly for founders. If you stick around until the end of the video, I'll share a resource you can lean on if your situation is more complex than what I discuss in this video. I'm Rob Walling. I'm a startup founder with multiple exits, author of 3 books on building startups, and an investor in more than 100 companies. I want to be clear from the top that this video is about founder equity, which is different than employee equity, which maybe is a topic we'll cover in a future video. But think about equity distribution for the founders of a company. To begin, everyone, even founders, should vest their equity. That means they don't get it all up front because there's a huge risk with a founder taking their equity on day one, stopping work on the company, and now you have a problem on your cap table. Standard vesting is a 4-year vesting period for equity with a 1-year cliff, meaning no one gets any equity for the first year. After 12 months, you get 25%, and then subsequent years, you get the remaining, 3/4 of the equity, basically. You don't have to stick to that script. It's just a typical vesting schedule. I have seen founders vest their equity in less time, like having a 3-year equity vesting period with a 1-year cliff, or 3 years with no cliff. There's different ways to do it. I want to be clear at the top of this video that none of this is legal, tax, or accounting advice. It's just the opinion of someone on the internet who has been around startups for a long time and invested in a lot of them. And so I have some battle scars to prove it. And I've seen cap tables that are well structured, and then I've seen some that have been decimated by unfortunate distribution of founder equity. I want to say something that maybe is a little bit controversial, that in all honesty, most companies should probably not split equity evenly between the founders. And that's because founders bring different things to the table depending on their experience, where they are in their career, how hard they're going to work on the company. There's so many factors. And the default, I think, is to kind of be harmonious and just say, well, if there's 3 founders, we each get equal split, right? If there's 2 founders, we each get equal split. And I think in a lot of cases, that maybe shouldn't be the case. So let's dive in to maybe some formulas that we can look at on how to better distribute equity. I want to introduce you to the TOC framework for calculating equity. It's TOC, which is time, opportunity cost, and cash contributions. And those are the 3 factors that you have to weigh as to what each founder brings to the company. So let's start with T, which is how many hours per week do you plan to work? How many hours per week does each founder plan to work in this company? So once we have our time commitment, we look at the opportunity cost. And this is how much would you each make working at the same company in the same location. So you can't say, well, I make X and you make Y if you live in New York City and I live in Alabama, because the costs of living are different. Or you work at Facebook and I work at General Mills, because the salaries are different. So you have to give it some thought, right? And work it out. Like if we both worked for the same company in the same location, how much do we think each of us would make? And so maybe one founder is more senior, they're a CTO or they're a VP of engineering, and they would make $160,000 working at a company in Minneapolis versus a junior dev who might make $80,000 working in Minneapolis. So now I want to look at 2 examples to kind of run through numbers, because look, we're doing math on the internet in a video, which is not the most riveting thing, but this is just to get the point across that this stuff is pretty complicated, and we're trying to quantify or simplify it such that you have some type of formula to look at. This is not going to cover every edge case or be perfect, but as I mentioned at the top of the video, anything that falls outside of here, any extenuating circumstances, you can look at the resource that I name at the end of this video. So for example 1, let's take founder 1, who, as we said above, would make $80,000 if they worked at the same company as founder 2. So $80,000 divided by 2,000 equals $40 an hour. Founder 2 makes $160,000 divided by 2,000, and that equals $80 an hour. So it's twice as much. If they're both going to work full time, then really we just add all the rates together. 80 plus 40 equals 120. And then we find out the percentage that each hourly rate gives us. So the $80 an hour employee is at 66 2/3%. And the $40 an hour employee is at 33 1/3. So it's a 2/3 to 1/3 split. Now that may seem crazy to, only take 1/3 of the company when you're both going to be working full time. But what this is trying to capture is the idea that opportunity costs are different for different people. That someone making $160,000 is probably 7 to 10 years into their career. They have a lot that they are putting on the line by starting this startup. Versus the person who is a year or 2 in their career, they have less to risk. And so whether you look at this and say, well, maybe 60-40 seems more fair, or whether, one founder takes compensation and you adjust this formula, or whether one founder buys in with cash contributions, as we'll look at below. That can also adjust this. So this is not something to take as gospel for your equity. Again, not legal advice, but it is a way to start getting to a point where you have some number other than just the default, well, we're going to split it evenly. Now let's look at example 2. So in this example, I'm going to mix up the salaries. So founder 1, let's say they make $100,000 a year, and you divide it by 2,000, you get $50 an hour. Founder 2, $150,000 a year, divided by 2,000, they get $75. Both going to work full time, but founder 2 is going to take $25 an hour out of the company. So you subtract that from their 75, and now we have $50 an hour each. And the hourly rate basically are equal. And since the hours are equal as well, because they're going full time, this would be more of an equal split. And so again, is this approach perfect? I don't think so, but I do think it's better than two founders splitting it 50-50 just because that's the default assumption. So in our TOC framework, TOC, T was time, O was the opportunity cost, and C is cash contributions. What if one founder has money in the bank and they want to put $50,000, $100,000 into the company? What you have to do here is decide on a company valuation. And then you figure out how much of the company the cash contribution purchases. So if you decide, well, two people with an idea is worth $450,000 and one founder wants to put in $50,000, then that would give a post-money valuation of 10%, right? You take 450 plus 50, and now 50 is 10% of 500,000. Post-money valuations are a whole topic unto themselves. I won't go into here, but 10% would basically come pro rata from each of the other founders who did not match this contribution. The challenge of splitting up equity in your startup is that different people come with different things to the table. They might come with experience and skills that are more valued in the market. They might come with more time available to commit to the startup. They might come with money. What I'm trying to do is take these numbers and put them into some type of framework that can give you a general direction of where you should head with deciding on equity. Because I have seen founder teams kind of screw this up where someone's only going to work 10 hours a week and they're working a day job and they're not super focused, and maybe they're a mid-level developer and they get an equal share of someone who is working full-time on the company and has sacrificed a lot. And so those numbers shouldn't be the same, but what we hear founders say is, but I don't want to get in the argument, or I don't know how to do this. Isn't there a formula? And while there is no exact, perfect formula, as I've said a few times, I do think this starts to get us towards a rough number or a rough estimate of how we could divide equity. Now, the problem with everything I've said so far in the video is it assumes that everyone starts working at the same time. Everyone works the hours that they say they're going to work, which doesn't always happen. So there is I'll say it's a more thorough, but a more complex approach that would actually be really cumbersome to go through in a video, but it handles the edge cases that I've mentioned. It handles a lot of edge cases, and I'm going to tell you about it in a second. Before I do that, I want to tell you about our community for bootstrapped and mostly bootstrapped SaaS founders. It's called MicroConf Connect. It's free. It's heavily moderated. It's an amazing community of more than 3,000 founders. Head to microconfconnect.com if you want to be part of the community and you get support. You can ask questions. It's a fun and knowledgeable place to hang out and to ask people questions about SaaS and to share your wins and your victories and your failures. That's microconfconnect.com. So I mentioned a more thorough approach to handling equity splits, and there's an entire book. It's called the Slicing Pie Handbook. It's available for purchase on Amazon, but it is an entire book devoted to this topic, and it goes even deeper than what I've been able to cover in this video. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We have new videos like this coming out every week, educational videos on detailed SaaS topics. Sometimes I interview folks, sometimes I answer listener questions live, and we have talk videos from all of our in-person events that eventually make it to the channel. Hope you enjoy this video. I'll see you in the next one.